صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أدعوك كما أمرت فاستجب لي كما وعدت، إنك لا تخلف الميعاد. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء، وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء، وخضع لها كل شيء، وذل لها كل شيء، وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء، وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء، وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء، وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء، وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء، وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء، وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء، وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء. يا نور يا قدوس، يا نور يا قدوس، يا نور يا قدوس، يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين. اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تهتك العصام، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النقام، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعام، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء، اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء، اللهم اغفر لكل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفع بك إلى نفسك، وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك، وأن توزعني شكرك، وأن تلهمني ذكرك. اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع، أن تسامحني وترحمني، وتجعلني بقسمك راضيا قانعا، وفي جميع الأحوال متواضعا. اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته، وعظم فيما عندك رغبته. اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك، وخفي مكرك وظهر أمرك، وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك، ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك. اللهم لا أجد لذنوب غافرا، ولا لقبائحي ساترا، ولا لشيء من عمل القبيح بالحسن مبدلا غيرك. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك، ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديم ذكرك لي ومنك علي. اللهم مولاي كم من قبيح سترت وكم من فادح من البلاء أقلت وكم من عثار وقيته وكم من مكروه دفعت وكم من ثناء جميل لست أهلا له نشرت. اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرط بي سوء حالي وقصرت بي أعمالي وقعدت بي أغلالي وحبسني عن نفع بعد آمالي وخدعتني الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بخيانتها ومطالي يا سيدي. فأسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعالي ولا تفضحني بخفي ما اطلعت عليه من سري ولا تعاجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملته في خلواتي من سوء فعلي وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجهالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي. وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في الأحوال كلها رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور عطوفا. إلهي وربي من لي غيرك من لي غيرك أسأله كشف ضري والنظر في أمري. إلهي ومولاي أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي ولم أحترس فيه من تزيين عدوي فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك القضاء فتجاوزت بما جرى علي من ذلك بعض حدوده وخالفت بعض أوامره فلك الحجة علي في جميع ذلك ولا حجة لي فيما جرى علي فيه قضاء وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤه. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستقيلا مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مذعنا معترفا لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإدخالك إياي في سعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة ضري وفكني من شدي وثاقي. يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني يا رب ارحم ضعف بدني ورقة جلدي ودقة عظمي. يا من بدأ خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي هبني لابتداء كرمك وسالف برك بي، يا إلهي وسيدي وربي. أتراك معذبي بنارك بعد توحيدك، وبعد ما انطوى علي قلبي من معرفتك، ولهج به لساني من ذكرك، واعتقده ضميري من حبك، وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خاضعا لربوبيتك. هيهات هيهات، أنت أكرم من أن تضيع من ربيت، أو تبعد من أدنيت، أو تشرد من آويت، أو تسلم إلى البلاء من كفيته ورحمت. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي، أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك ساجدا، وعلى ألسن نطقت بتوحيدك صادقا، وبشكرك مادحا، وعلى قلوب اعترفت بإلهيتك محققا، وعلى ضمائر حوت من العلم بك حتى صارت خاشعة، وعلى جوارح سعت إلى الأوطان تعبدك طائعة، وأشارت باستغفارك مذعنا. ما هكذا ظنوا بك، ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم. يا رب وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها، وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه قليل مكثو، يصير بقاء، قصير مدة. فكيف احتمالي لبلاء الآخرة وجليل وقوع المكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مقامه، ولا يخفف عن أهلي، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف بي وأنا عبدك الضعيف الذليل الحقير المسكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو، ولما منها أضج وأبكي، لأليم العذاب وشدته أم لطول البلاء ومدته؟ فلئن صيرتني للعقوبات مع أعدائك، وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك، وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فهبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي وربي. صبرت على عذابك، فكيف أصبر على فراقك؟ وهبني صبرت على حر نارك، فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك؟ أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجاء عفوك؟ فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا، لئن تركتني ناطقا لأضجن إليك بين أهلها ضجيج الآملين، ولأصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين، ولأبكين عليك بكاء الفاقدين، ولأنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين، يا غاية آمال العارفين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا غياث المستغيثين، يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين، ويا إله العالمين. أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوت عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفته، وذاق طعم عذابها بمعصيته، وحبس بين أطباقها بجرمه وجريرته، وهو يضج إليك ضجيج مؤمل لرحمتك، ويناديك بلسان أهل توحيدك، ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك. يا مولاي، فكيف يبقى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمه؟ أم كيف تؤلمه النار وهو يأمل فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يحرقه لهيبها وأنت تسمع صوته وترى مكانه؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه؟ أم كيف يتقلقل بين أطباقها وأنت تعلم صدقا؟ أم كيف تشجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا ربا؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في عتقه منها فتتركه فيها؟ هيهات ما ذلك الظن به، ولا المعروف من فضله، ولا مشبه لما عاملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك. فباليقين أقطع لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جاحدي، وقضيت به من إخلاد معاندي، لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما، وما كانت لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما، لكنك تقدست أسماؤك أقسمت أن تملأها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين، وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين، وأنت جل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتطولت بالإنعام متكرما. أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستوون. إلهي وسيدي، فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها، وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها، أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمت، كل جرم أجرمت، وكل ذنب أذنبت، وكل قبيح أسررت، وكل جهل عملت، كتمته أو أعلنت، أخفيته أو أظهرت، وكل سيئة أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني، وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جوارحي، وكنت أنت الرقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم، وبرحمتك أخفيت وبفضلك سترت، وأن توفر حظي من كل خير تنزل أو إحسان تفضل أو بر تنشر أو رزق تبسط أو ذنب تغفر أو خطأ تستر. يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك رقي، يا من بيده ناصيتي، يا عليما بضري ومسكنتي، يا خبيرا بفقري وفاقتي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا ربي يا ربي أسألك بحقك وقدسك وأعظم صفاتك وأسمائك أن تجعل أوقاتي في الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا، وبخدمتك موصولا، وأعمالي عندك مقبولا، حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا، وحالي في خدمتك سرمدا. يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي، يا من إليه شكوت أحوالي، يا ربي يا ربي يا ربي قو على خدمتك جوارحي، واشدد على العزيمة جوانحي، وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك، حتى أصرح إليك في ميادين السابقين، وأسرع إليك في المبادرين، وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاقين، وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين، وأخافك مخافة الموقنين، وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأرد، ومن كادني فكد، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيبا عندك، وأقربهم منزلة منك، وأخصهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك. وجد لي بجودك، واعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لهجا، وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك، وأقلني عثرتي، واغفر زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك، وأمرتهم بدعائك، وضمنت لهم الإجابة. فإليك يا ربي نصبت وجهي، وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني مناي، ولا تقطع من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي. يا سريع الرضا، يا سريع الرضا، يا سريع الرضا، اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء. يا من اسمه الدواء وذكره شفاء وطاعته غنى، ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاحه البكاء. يا سابغ النعم، يا دافع النقام، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلام، يا عالما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد، وافعل بما أنت أهله. وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله، وسلم تسليما كثيرا. For the souls of all those who have departed us, and for the souls of the beloved of all those who are gathered here today, please recite Surah Al-Fatiha, but before it the loudest of your salawat. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. A couple of announcements before we begin our majlis. This Saturday, inshallah, we'll be hosting a Salat al-Eid here at the masjid beginning at 9 a.m. So we're going to start with takbirat at 9 a.m. Haj Kawthar Khan will lead the Salah, inshallah, and then after it, we're going to have a community potluck. So please bring something in. And this year, in the email, there should have been a link. You can register what food you're bringing, just so that we don't have everybody kind of bringing in the same dish. That way we'll kind of have a nice variety this year. That was one of the suggestions we had for the last Eid event that we had. And then next Friday, inshallah, we'll be having another family night led by Brother Abbas Mamdani. That one will be, if I'm not mistaken, a calligraphy night, right, Brother Abbas?
Yes, that's the calligraphy night. That will start at 7:30 p.m. and that has a mandatory registration. So registration will go out tomorrow most likely, and make sure you register.
Okay, so you heard that, yeah, mandatory registrations because there's limited numbers because it is going to be a very active event. So please sign up and bring your families. And I think, okay, anything else that I missed? Okay, so without further ado, tonight we are honoring the Shahadat of our fifth Imam, Imam al-Baqir, with a speech by Hujjat al-Islam, Syed Tayyab al-Mosavi. Please welcome him with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Is that right? Yeah?
that should be fine. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يوصينا معه العدون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي لا يدركه بهد الهمم ولا يناله غوث الفتن الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت محدود ولا أجل ممدود فترى الخلائق بقدرته ونشر الرياح برحمته ووتد بالسخر ميدان أرض ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وحبيبنا وحبيب رب العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعن على أعدائهم أجمعين من أول يوم ظلمهم إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد فقال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المبين وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يؤتي الحكمة من يشاء ومن يؤتى الحكمة فقد أوتي خيرا كثيرا وما يذكر إلا أولو الألباب صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As you're all aware, inshallah, tonight we were commemorating the Shahadat of our fifth holy Imam, Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam. And to begin with, this holy Imam of ours, this Imam and the sixth Imam, they have two nicknames that everyone knows them by, very famous nicknames, Al-Baqirain and As-Sadiqain. These two nicknames, Al-Baqirain, what does Baqir mean? Baqir means that person that splits open knowledge. Baqir in Arabic, if you were to go to the meaning of it, it is basically when you plant a seed. What happens when you plant a seed? When that seed starts to sprout, what does it do, that sprout? It splits open that seed. That's where Baqir comes from. And Al-Baqirain is given to these two Imams because that's exactly what they did with knowledge. What did they do? They split open knowledge and let it grow. What do I mean? It was in the life of these two Imams that Islamic knowledge spread wide within the Islamic community. By the time that Imam Muhammad Baqir came, by the time Imam Jafar Sadiq came, what had happened to Islamic knowledge? Not general knowledge itself, but Islamic knowledge in particular, it had completely changed. From the way prayers were done, to the way what was supposed to happen for kafara of salat, for kafara of sawm. All of this Islamic knowledge, Islamic laws, they were different from what they were in the time of the Holy Prophet ﷺ. So by the time these Imams came, not only did they give the world philosophy, not only did they give the world sciences, but what did they spend most of their time on? On Islamic knowledge, on theology, on fiqh. Why? Because by that time there were many Muslims, and by that time Islam wasn't as pure as it was during the time of the Holy Prophet. This is one of the reasons that they were known as Baqirain. It's sad today that we have two Imams that have been given that nickname of Baqirain, the ones that split open knowledge, yet you see that a lot of the people in Islamic countries, they're the most ignorant of the world. They're the most ignorant. How sad is that? This isn't how it should be. When you have two Imams that are known to have split open knowledge, you should always strive to gain that knowledge. And this is exactly what Imam Muhammad Baqir tried to do in his lifetime. Give as much knowledge as he can before he left this world. A very famous narration of the Holy Prophet. Utlibul ilm minal mahdil ilal lahdi. Seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. And this is exactly what Imam Muhammad Baqir, Imam Jafar Sadiq wanted to do to this Islamic Ummah. Give them knowledge from the cradle to the grave. But there were very few people that seek that knowledge from where it needed to be sought from. Very few. And in the time of Imam Muhammad Baqir, there are very few. For example, one of the most famous companions of Imam Baqir, his name was Aban bin Taghlib. Aban. For this companion, Imam Baqir, he used to say, Aban, I want you to sit in the Masjid al-Rasul and I want you to give out fatwas. I want you to sit in the Masjid of Rasulullah and I want you to give out fatwas. And what does the Imam say about this companion? He says, I love it when my companions are like this. I love my companions to be like you, Aban. Where are we and where are the companions of the Imam? To be honest, at the end of the day, speaking from a religious perspective, isn't that what every Shia wants to hear from their Imam? For the Imam to say, I love that I have amongst my Shias people like you. That's what we all should strive for the Imam of our time to say that, yes, you are one of my Shias. Yet where are we and where are the companions of the Imams? For example, there's been research done. Americans, they spend 5 to 6.5 hours daily on their phones. 5 to 6.5 hours daily on their phones, and that's not including work-related stuff. Of those 5 to 6.5 hours, 2.5 hours is spent on social media. 2.5 hours. If you and I are included in those people that spend 5 to 6 hours, how different would our life be? How much more of an understanding of the Imams would we have if instead of spending those 2 to 2.5 hours on social media, we spent those 2 to 2.5 hours reading the life, reading the history of the Imam? How much more knowledge would we have? How much of a better Shia would we be if we spent those 2 hours looking, for example, at the book of Masail of our Marija? How much better Shia would we be? But because we live in this society, what do? We forget what our end goal is. There's no problem being incorporated within the society, but when that society little by little is taking you away from your ultimate end goal, then you have to start thinking and you have to start asking yourself, what am I doing with my life? Where am I going? Where is this society leading me? Do I want to lead myself where I need to go to, or am I going to follow this society and let them lead me to a place where I don't want to be? Al-Baqirin. The second, As-Sadiqin. What does Sadiq mean? The truthful. We have 2 Imams that are known by this nickname of As-Sadiqin, and how easy it is for a lot of Shias to lie. How easy it is. If you look at Shahid Dastaghaib's book, 40 Greater Sins, sin number 17 in that book. It's been translated into every language now. It's in Urdu, it's in Farsi, it's in English, it's in Arabic. Sin number 17 in that book is what? Lying. Lying. And the Imam himself, what does he say? The Quran, for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Inna Allah la yahdi man huwa kadhibun kuffar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not guide those that are liars and those that are ungrateful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not. You see this phrase a lot of times in the Quran. Inna Allah la yahdi al-zalimin. Inna Allah la yahdi al-kafirin. Inna Allah la yahdi al-kadhibin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not guide all these people. Fasiqeen, kadhibin, kafirin. Anyone that's read the Quran and contemplated over what they're reading, have you ever asked yourself, why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say this? Isn't it the kadhibin that need to be guided? Isn't it the kafirin that need to be guided? Isn't it the fasiqeen that need to be guided? What's the point of guiding people that have already been on the right path? Is there any sense in that? What does it mean? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not guide the kadhibin. What does it mean? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not guide the kafirin. What does that mean? If we were to think about the Quran and analyze it and look at what the Imam say. What does this mean? This doesn't mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't guide them in the sense that we're thinking, this zahiri meaning. No. What has this individual done? This individual has now closed his heart for that guidance. This individual, he himself, he's closed their heart for that. If he himself has lied so much now, what happens? If you were to tell him the truth, he's not accepting of the truth. Why? Because he's just habituated himself into lying, and now his whole mentality has become that. That's it. So what has this person done? They've closed their heart to the truth. A kafir, what have they done? Is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the one not guiding the kafir? No. This individual has closed himself to that light, to that nur of iman, to that nur of tawheed. And because these individuals have closed themselves to that light, there's no way for them to be guided. They're the ones that close themselves. As long as there's even a little bit acceptance of this nur of guidance, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will continuously try to guide them. As long as they've left this door open. But when they close it themselves, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not sit there with a stick and try to beat this individual to guidance. No, that's not his job. That's not the job of any scholar that's come. That's not the job of any prophets that's been set by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to beat their community with a stick, to force their community to accept whatever the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No. They accept it or they don't. That's it. Salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The Imam, what did he spend most of his time on? He spent most of his time, he spent most of his money on what? On people like Aban, on students. Why? Because he didn't want these students who would tomorrow, to this day, maybe you all don't know people like Aban. Maybe you all don't know people like Zurara. But if you ask any of the Maraja when you go to meet them, who's Zurara? They'll tell you that from Zurara we have over 6,000 hadiths that tell us about fiqh. If you ask them about Aban, they'll tell you we have about 8,000 hadiths on fiqh that come from Aban. They all know. The people that need to know who these individuals are, they all know. But one of the most famous companions, of Imam Baqir, Jabir Jofi. This companion, Imam Baqir, he used to say that he's a Salman of this time. Why was that? Because the Imam, he used to, when it came to these two Imams, they used to look at individuals and they used to see what this individual can do for this religion. For example, if they saw that an individual was good at debating, they teach them the fun, they teach them how to debate. If they saw that an individual was good at fiqh, they teach them fiqh. If they saw an individual was good at philosophy, they teach them philosophy. What was special about Jabir Jofi? Jabir Jofi, when the Imam says that he is the Salman of this time, Jabir Jofi, there's something special about him, and it's one of the things is that when Imam Zaman rises, the first person from humanity, because when Imam Zaman rises, we have narrations that say that people will rise from the grave to help the Imam. The first person that will pay bay'ah to the Imam, the first human being that will pay bay'ah to the Imam is Jabir Jofi. Jabir Jofi. He is going to pay bay'ah to the Imam, the first person. But Imam Baqir, what did he do? He taught Jabir 70,000 hadiths. And these weren't just regular hadiths. These hadiths dealt with imamat and its reality. And he told Jabir, as long as I'm alive, you are not allowed to disseminate, you're not allowed to tell these hadiths to anyone. As long as I'm alive, you're not allowed to tell anyone these hadiths. Jabir goes, Mullah, what should I do? If I need to get this off my chest, what should I do? He goes, go dig a hole in the ground and speak into it. Imam Hussein alayhi salam used to do the same thing. Imam Zain al-Abidin to his companions, Amir al-Mu'mineen, he used to tell his companions to do the same thing. For example, Kumail ibn Ziyad, he used to tell Kumail to do that too. If you need to get something off your chest, then go dig a hole in the ground and speak to it to the ground. Imam Baqir did the same thing. But what did Imam Baqir do? He spent his wealth on these students to the point where he tells Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam to do the exact same thing. And these two Imams, they spent everything they had on students. Did they not give to the poor? No, they gave to the poor. But they spent on students also. Those students that were taking forward this religion of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. 1, 2. When it comes to history of a lot of the prophets that we have in our books, do you know which Imam it comes from? If you look at the history of, for example, Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, if you look at the history of Hazrat Yaqub alayhi salam, if you look at the history or the stories of Hazrat Nuh alayhi salam, if you look at the stories of Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, a lot of those stories, they come from Hazrat Imam Baqir alayhi salam. So Islam is getting history from whom? Imam Baqir alayhi salam. For example, Imam, he's telling the story of Hazrat, one incident with Hazrat Nuh alayhi salam. And he tells his companion that one day, Shaitan la'natullah alayh, he came to Hazrat Nuh and he says to him, Ya Nuh, I need to thank you because you've done me a favor. And because you've done me a favor, I'm going to give you a reward. And Hazrat Nuh, he said, Oh La'in, I hate that I've done you a favor. What favor have I done you? And Shaitan, he says, Ya Nuh, because you cursed the community and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wiped out everyone. Now, what's happened with me? I used to trouble myself to try and dissuade people from the right path. I used to trouble myself to go and get people away from the right path. But now, because there's no one to misguide, you've saved me a lot of time. You've saved me a lot of time. And Hazrat Nuh, he says, what is the reward that you want to give me? And Shaitan, he says, Ya Nuh, the reward is that I want you and the servant to remember me in 3 instances. I want the servant to remember me in 3 instances. And Hazrat Nuh, he goes, what are those? He goes, the first is when the servant is angry. I want him to remember me. Why? What happens when you're angry? Everything just comes out of your mouth without you even thinking. Everything comes. And then what happens later on? You end up regretting more than half of the stuff you say. What happens when you're angry? That anger ends up leading to fights. That anger ends up leading to qat'i rahim. That anger ends up leading to a lot of the evils that end up happening in society. So Shaitan, he says, I want the servants to remember me in 3 instances. 1 is when they're angry. 2, I want the servant to remember me when they have to judge between 2 people. When they have to judge between 2 people. Why is that? Why is that? Tomorrow, if one of my friends comes in front of me and someone I dislike comes in front of me and they have a complaint and they bring it in front of me, what will most people do? They'll just side with the friend. They'll just side with, why? Because he's your friend. This guy doesn't like me, I don't like him. But this guy, we get along perfectly fine. So what happens when you have that kind of mentality and now someone's come for judgment? You haven't looked at what's right and wrong. All you've looked at is what? The relationship you have with the 2 people. That's it. And then Shaitan, he goes, Ya Nuh, the 3rd instance is when this servant is alone with a non-mahram. I want this servant to remember me. Some of the sins that you see in societies, it's exactly because of this. Even if nothing happened, what happens to the pride of the 2 individuals? In the community, whatever status they had, because they were alone together, whatever status they had, it ends up lowering, even if nothing happened. So Shaitan, he says, I want you to remember me. One of the times that I want this servant to remember me is when they're alone with the non-mahram. This is Shaitan giving or telling the individual what to do when these circumstances arise. Some of us, we follow through. When we're angry, we control our temper. When it comes time to judge, we judge based on the facts that are in front of us, not our relationship to the individual. When we're with a non-mahram, we're not there alone. We're in a place where other people are able to see. Others, no. 1, 2. One of the most important in terms of religion, in terms of theocracy, stories that we have from Imam Baqir alayhi salam, and you get still asked this question to this day. In heaven, we can eat as much as we want, we drink as much as we want, but that food and drink never decreases. That food and drink never decreases. Imam Baqir alayhi salam and some of the ulama, they say that it was after this meeting with this Christian monk that Hisham ibn Abdul Malik, he had the Imam poisoned when he went back to Medina. What was this meeting? The Imam, he was called to Syria. When he was called to Syria, the Imam, he meets the people there. He has his discussions with everyone. And then one day he sees that there are people that are going up towards the mountain. And what does the Imam do? He asks the people of Syria, is this a day of festival for the Christians? And they say, no, Ya ibn Rasulullah, this isn't. It's just that once a year there's a monk that lives out in the mountains. Once a year he comes and he asks the people and answers their question. And today happens to be that day. That's why you see all these Christians that are going. So the Imam, he says, you know what, let us go see this person. So the Imam, he goes with these people, he puts on, he covers his face, he covers his head, he covers his face, and he goes with these Christians. When he sits down, this Christian monk, he sees the Imam and he asks him, are you one of us or are you from the Muslims? And the Imam, he says that I'm one of the Muslims. Then the Christian scholar, he asks him, are you of the ignorant ones or are you a scholar? The Imam, he doesn't say, I'm a scholar. All he says is, what? I'm not ignorant. I'm not ignorant. The Imam who has that knowledge, or that much knowledge which he's giving to the rest of the world, this Imam does not say that I'm a scholar. Yet you have people that come on the manabir who claim to be scholars. What does the Imam say? All he says is, I'm not ignorant. That's it. I'm not ignorant. That Imam is saying, I'm not ignorant. And you have people that come on the manabir and they say, I'm a scholar. What is there to be proud of? What kind of a scholar are you? But when he says this, the monk, he goes, should I ask you questions first or do you want to ask me questions? And the Imam, he says, if you want, by all means, please, you can ask questions. The first question that this monk asks is, he says, why do you Muslims claim that residents of heaven eat and drink without the need to urinate or without the need to defecate? How is it possible? You claim that humans in heaven, they'll eat and drink as much as they want, but they'll never need to use the bathroom, basically. And the man, he goes, is there something that's analogous? Is there something that's almost similar in this world? And if there is, can you tell me about it? And the Imam, he goes, yes, there is. Something that's analogous in this world is the fetus. The fetus, it eats and drinks, but it doesn't defecate. It's called excretion in a scientific sense, but it doesn't defecate. Fetus, when it's still in the womb. So the Christian monk, He goes, okay. The second thing he asks is, why do you believe that heavenly fruits and blessings never decrease? In heaven, as soon as you pick a fruit, it doesn't decrease. It's not like the fruit isn't there anymore. The fruit comes back. So why do you believe? He says, why do you believe that in heaven the fruits and blessings never decrease? And however much you can consume, and they still remain. Is there something that's analogous in this world? Is there something that is similar in this world? And the Imam, he says, yes, there is. And the man, he asks him, what is it? He goes, it's a fire. It's a fire. And he goes, what do you mean? From that one fire that's on one candle, you can light 1,000 different candles. Does that fire cease to exist? No. No, it doesn't. Then the man, he goes, okay, can you tell me about that part which is not a part of the night, nor the part of the day? And Imam Baqir, he just answers that that part which is not considered to be part of the night or considered to be part of the day is the time between dawn and sunrise. Between dawn and sunrise, he says that that part is not considered to be part of the night or part of the day. And then he goes, the last question he asks is, he says, let me know about two people who were born on the same day and died on the same day, but one of them lived to be 50 years and the other lived to be 150 years. They were born on the same day, they died on the same day, but one of them lived to be 50 years old and the other lived to be 150 years old. And Imam, he says that who you're talking about are Uzair and his brother Azra. And he goes, what do you mean? And in the Quran, you have a story about Hazrat Uzair, where when he was passing, an Imam, he tells him the same thing. He says, Uzair, he was passing through a village and he sees nothing but bones. And he thinks to himself, how is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala going to bring these people to life? So what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? He makes Uzair to die. Uzair, the donkey that he was on, and the food, the donkey dies with Uzair. After 100 years, Uzair is raised up again. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks him, Uzair, how long did you rest? How long were you like that? Uzair, what does he say? Yes. He thought that he was like that for a day. He thought that he was like that for a few hours. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, no. You've been dead for 100 years. Uzair, what does he do? He goes back to his town and he sees that his brother, he's very old now, and his brother's grandchildren are there. When he goes there, he looks at them and he asks them, take me to your father. He takes the grandchildren, they take Uzair to the grandfather, and the grandfather, Azra, doesn't recognize Uzair. Why? Because Uzair still looks like he is. He's still in his 20s, he's still in his young. Now his brother is 125 years old. What does Uzair say? Uzair, when he starts talking about what him and his brother used to do when they were still younger, that's when Azra asked him, who are you? How do you know about what me and my brother used to do? Are you of the humans or are you of the angels? And that's when Uzair says, I'm Uzair, I'm your brother. And this is what happened with me. When the Imam told him this whole story, what does this monk do? He looks at the Christians, he gets angry at them, and he tells them that you brought this Muslim scholar just to defame me in front of everyone. You brought this Muslim scholar just to defame me in front of everyone. If I live to see next year, I will never come out and meet you all. And this story of Hazrat Imam Baqir, it became famous. And where did it become famous first? In Syria itself. And when the Khalifa of that time heard about this story and he realized what the Imam was doing with these types of debates, that's when he wanted the Imam to be poisoned. And where does the Imam get poisoned? In Syria? No. The Imam, he's poisoned. Where is Imam Baqir buried? In Medina. And that's exactly where he was poisoned. A lot of people don't know this, or they seem to forget. But Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam, the narrations, they state that he was 4 or 5 years old when the events of Karbala happened. 4 or 5 years old. Can you imagine what your life would be like when you see with your own eyes your grandfather being martyred on the lands of Karbala at the age of 4, at the age of 5? Can you imagine what your life will be like when you see your aunties running out of the tents because now the tents have been set on fire? This was Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam. Sallallahu alayka ya Rasulallah. Sallallahu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Sallallahu alayki ya Siddiqatu Fatima. Sallallahu alayka ya Hasan al-Mujtaba. Sallallahu alayka ya Gharib al-Ghuraba. Ya Aba Abdullah al-Husayn. Ya Husayn. Brothers and sisters, when the time comes for Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam to leave this world, he calls Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam and he calls his auntie Fatima and he says to her, "Oh auntie dear, I've lived to see 58 years of my life." And as soon as he says this, his auntie realizes what the Imam means by this. When she hears this, he calls the son, he calls Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, he says, "Oh my son, pretty soon I will leave this world. You will have to shroud me. You will have to give me the kafan. You will have to bathe me. You will put me into my grave." Brothers and sisters, this Imam of ours, do you know where he was in Karbala? There are narrations that state that this Imam, when those tents were being burned, all of the people in Karbala, they all ran into one tent, and that tent had Imam Zayn al-Abidin in it. And the narrations state that Imam Zayn al-Abidin, because he was sick and he couldn't get up, where was he? He was sitting on the floor and he was unconscious on the floor. Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam, at the age of 4, at the age of 5, he gets on the chest of his father, Imam Zayn al-Abidin, and he says to him, "Oh father dear, please get up. All these tents are being burned." Hamid ibn Muslim, when he was asked, what was the situation that was the most distraught to you? He tells him about what happened to Ali Asghar. He tells him this situation where Imam Muhammad Baqir, he takes his father, he helps his father get out of the tent, and when they all get out of the tent, what does Imam Zayn al-Abidin do? He gets out of the tent and he falls to the ground. When he falls to the ground, Imam Muhammad Baqir, he gets on top again on the chest of Imam Zayn al-Abidin and he asks him, "Oh father dear, are you okay?" "Oh Imam Muhammad Baqir, you were 4, you were 5, but there was also one of your aunties that was 4 and 5 years old, Lady Sakina Salawatullah alayha. When she would ask for her father, she would get slapped. When you were asking for your father, nothing would happen to you." The narration said, what happened with Lady Sakina after these tents were burned? Lady Sakina, she goes out towards Furat, and as she goes out towards Furat, Hamid ibn Muslim, he says what? He says that I see this little girl, she's coming towards me, and when she comes towards me, I go towards her, and when I go towards her, this little girl, she puts both of her hands together, and she says, "Oh kind sir, oh sir, I have nothing left. They already took everything from me. They snatched my earring. You can see that my ears are bleeding." And Hamid ibn Muslim, he says, "Oh my little daughter, I'm not here to take anything from you. All I want to do is put out the fire. That's all your clothes." Hamid ibn Muslim, when he puts out the fire, This little girl, she says, "Oh, kind sir, you've done me a favor. Please, can you do me one more favor?" And Hamid, he asks, what do you want me to do? And Lady Sakina, she says, "Can you tell me the direction to Najaf?" And Hamid, he asks, "Who is there in Najaf? Why do you want to go to Najaf?" And Lady Sakina, she says, "Oh, sir, my grandfather Ali is in Najaf. I want to go meet him. I want to complain to him about what had happened to me here." And Hamid, he points towards Najaf. And Lady Sakina, she's walking towards Najaf, and then what does she see? She sees that there's a rider who comes towards her. When this rider comes, he comes down off his horse and he picks up Lady Sakina and he asks her, "Oh, my daughter, where are you going?" And this Lady Sakina, she says, "Oh, kind sir, I'm going to Najaf." And this rider, he says, "Who's in Najaf?" And she says, "My grandfather Ali is in Najaf." By this time, Lady Zainab, she comes to this place and she says, "Oh, rider, thank you so much. You found this last girl. I was looking for this last girl. She is the most beloved of Abu Abdullah Hussein. Can you give this girl back to me?" This rider, he puts Lady Sakina on the ground and he says one thing. He says, "Zainab." When he says Zainab, Lady Zainab, she looks away from him and she says, "Oh, rider, how do you know who I am?" And the rider, he says, "Oh, my daughter Zainab." When he says, "Oh, my daughter Zainab," that's when she realized that it was her father Amir al-Mu'minin who had come. And she says, "Oh, father dear, now you have come. When I was calling you, when my brother Hussein was martyred, you never came. When Abbas was martyred, you never came." Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Ya Allah, I ask you to forgive our sins, to forgive the sins of all of those marhumin, mu'mineen, mu'minat that do not have anyone to ask for forgiveness on their behalf. Ya Allah, I ask you to please hasten the reappearance of Imam of our time and let us, our families, and anyone that wants to sacrifice their life for him and his cause. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Abbas, is there Latmia? No. We have about 10 minutes for question and answers if you all have any questions. No questions? No, there's no questions. We're sitting amongst Maharaja and we're sitting amongst ulama. That's why there are no questions. No, inshallah. But if there are no questions, once again, please recite Surah Fatiha for your marhumin. Recite Surah Fatiha for all of those marhumin that do not have anyone to recite Surah Fatiha on their behalf. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Malik yawmiddin. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allahumma ighfirhum warhamhum wa Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad.
Let's all recite a salawat for Sayyid Tayyab, for his well-being and his family's well-being. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I don't know if any new people joined us, so I'm going to quickly make the announcements from earlier once again. Inshallah, Saturday morning we will be having Salatul Eid here at 9 a.m. And it will be a potluck breakfast after that. So the registration is available on Yasin's link tree. Also, it was in the email that just went out. So go ahead and register there. Next Friday, we will be having another family night. For that family night, it is a calligraphy night. We have a calligrapher from Riverside that's going to be coming in to teach a class that evening. So please come out to that. Please make sure you register online for that beforehand. The email for that, for the registration, should go out in the next day or two, inshallah. And then tomorrow is the day of Arafah, so please remember us all in your du'as. Yasin will not be having a program for that, but if I know Sabah and Masjid Rasul both have programs, so you should be able to tune in online for those. And we'll end with a short ziyarah, inshallah. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء سيدة النساء العالمين السلام عليك يا خديجة الكبرى أم المؤمنين والمؤمنات السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء السلام عليك يا سلطان أبا الحسن علي بن موسى الرضا السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان عجل الله تعالى فرجك وسهل الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك وجعلنا الله من عوانك وأنصارك ورحمة الله وبركاته الله